Okay, so good afternoon. Today we are going to be looking at the introduction to trigonometry. Now you are going to need a calculator for this, a scientific calculator. If you don't have one at hand, if you use the calculator on your smartphone and tilt it to the landscape, that will have some of the scientific parts that we'll need, things like sine, cosine and tangent. Failing that, if you do a quick search on your search bar, you should be able to get a calculator come up in your browser. So to start with, we're just going to be looking at identifying sides of a triangle. Now you should already be familiar with the hypotenuse, which we know as the longest side on a right angle triangle, which is always opposite the right angle. So here, look, hypotenuse is opposite my right angle, and here, this was that slope side. There's two other parts that we need to label as well. So we've got the adjacent, which is next to. Adjacent means next to, so that's next to whichever angle in question here. So on my example, you can see that I've got an angle here. This symbol is theta, which is what we use, just like we use x in algebra. We use this when we're doing geometry to represent that angle we're looking for. So I'm going to label this A because it's adjacent, it's next to the angle. And then we have the opposite, which is directly opposite the angle. So a bit like how the hypotenuse is opposite the right angle, the opposite is always opposite the angle we're looking for. So this is going to be task 1 for you. So here we go, there's my second example. This is opposite theta, and this is next to it, it's adjacent, so A. So task 1, all you're going to be doing is you're going to be labeling each side of these right angle triangles AO and H. So it shouldn't take too long. So have a look there, there's 8 triangles. There are a couple that are a little bit more complicated. So some of them, I'll give you a clue on number 8, maybe you need to draw another line because that's not a right angle triangle. Make a right angle triangle there. Yeah? So have a go on them and see how you do. Task 2, so this is where we're going to need our calculators. And we have our 3 trigonometric ratios at the top. So this is SOHCAHTOA. So sine equals opposite over hypotenuse. And again, we've got theta there. Cosine equals, this is our car, adjacent over hypotenuse, and tan or tangent is opposite over adjacent. So I'm going to show you how we can use these ratios to find any missing length today. So we're going to look for missing lengths. So what we've got here is we've got BC. We're looking for BC. So it's this length here. So I could just label that X to make it easier. We're looking for X. So what we need to do now is we just need to look at which sides are appropriate. So we've got angle BAC. So X is the opposite to that angle. Line AC is the adjacent, and 8 is the hypotenuse. So we need to look at what we're looking for and what we need. So we don't need A. We do need to find O, which is our line BC, which I've labelled as X. Could keep it as O. And we do have H. So we've got O and H. So we need the first ratio here. We need SOH. So sine theta equals O over H. So I'm gonna write that. So sine theta, again forgive my writing, equals O over H. Now I'm going to substitute in the values that I know. So I'm going to get sine 50 equals, so we're going to say X all over 8. So we're looking for X. We know that the angle is 50, and that the hypotenuse is 8. Now we're going to balance this to get x on its own. So you can see we've got a divide by 8 there. So if I multiply both sides by 8, and you can see I've got my little balancing arrows here. I'm going to put times 8. I'm going to get 8. Now it's really important that you don't put sine 58. Sine 50 is all one thing. So I've got 8 sine 50. You don't have to put it in brackets. You can put the 8 in front, but make sure it goes in front. 8 sine 50 equals x. So substitute in, then balance, and then you should be able to solve. So now on my calculator, you will need your calculator for these, so don't think that you can solve it. So I'm going to write 8 sine 50. Try it again. So if you're using your phone, do sine 50 So I would actually suggest at this point that you don't use the calculator on your phone. It's a bit rubbish. So use an actual proper one. Okay. And you're going to type in 8, you can type it all as one thing, sine 50, and that's going to give you the length. That'll give you the value for x. So I'm going to write x equals it's giving me a negative number for some reason. Okay, I'm going to come back to that. I don't have my mathematical calculator at hand and I don't want to lose pace. So that should give you the correct answer if you've done it correct. Let's have a look at the next one. Okay, so example 2, find x. So this time round I've got the angle of 40. I'm looking for x, which is my opposite, and I've got the adjacent. So I've got O and A. I don't need h, so I'm going to use tan for this one. Okay, so here we go. So I'm going to substitute in now. So I'm going to say tan. The angle in question is 40 equals x over 13. So this is where we would balance. We'd times both sides by 13. And I'm going to get 13 tan 40 equals x. And then we can work that out using a calculator. So we're going to type in 13 tan 40 I can see why mine was wrong. Now, what I've got is I've got my calculator set to radians, and that's why it's giving me an incorrect answer. So if you change that to degrees, and then try that now. That's given me much better. So here we go. I've got a length here of 10.912 dp and that seems much more correct. And we'll just have a look back at the last one as well. So x equals 10.91 cm, and you can see that's much closer to 13. So that, you know, your numbers should be roughly similar, unless these are really weird triangles. So let's try and solve our first equation now. So 8 sine 50, 6.128, so I'm going to write that as 6.13, and again that seems much more correct. So make sure whatever calculator you're using, if you don't have a school calculator, is set to degrees, otherwise you'll end up with a negative number. Okay, so qualifiers again. So let's just start the first qualifier for you. So remember, label your triangle, that's why we did task prob. So we need the opposite, which is x, and we've got the hypotenuse. So we're looking for the ratio at the top that has OH. Okay, so I'll give you a clue. That's so. Task 2, that's 6 questions. Now task 3, we've got some exam style questions. So you need to be able to answer these, and also do some harder work. So there might be some explaining, there might be some problem solving, there might be some worded problems. Remember my advice, if it's tricky, draw a picky. And this is all going to be finding lengths based off those 3 ratios. So you should be okay really, as long as you remember that we're using that skill we've just picked up in task 2. Yeah. Label the triangles, that will help you to decide which ratio it is. There's some more challenge questions, so I do want everybody to have a go at these. If it's not a right angled triangle, remember what I said for task 1 question 8, make a right angled triangle. Alter the diagram so that you can use trigonometry. And then there's an exit ticket as well, so quite a few questions. The key to this is there's really just 3 steps. So you want to label your triangle, write the ratio out, which one you're using, SOHCAHTOA, substitute in, and then balance and solve. And remember, for that last step, use your calculator, but you don't really need to use a calculator until you've got to that point at the end. Okay.